Deep in the heart of the Ozarks, there is an old tree high on the banks of a free-flowing river. She has watched the sunrise and the sunset long before we came. She has been here throughout our history, quietly observing the entirety of our story, and always wondering, what will we do next?
The interesting thing to me about conservation and where the biggest strides have been made, they've been made during the worst of times. So if we think about the 30s, if we think about the Great Depression, wildlife populations had been decimated in many places, habitats had been decimated. You know, the Dust Bowl essentially blew into D.C. It was the only way that politicians began to pay attention to what was going on in the Midwest.
That stark reality was where we were at the time that wildlife conservation first began in our state.
What they created in the way of these foundational principles not only set the story for Missouri conservation, but really set the story for the conservation movement around the country.
Those words that were written and passed by the public in the 1930s have stood the test of time.
There's precious few other places on earth like this, and there's nowhere else that began it as early as we did here in Missouri.
You know, there have been attempts almost every legislative session to introduce a bill that would essentially do away with the Conservation Amendment. Those bills come up as regularly as the migration of geese.
Challenge after challenge has been made to them to try to say no, short-term interest, whether it's the development or the taking a piece of property away from the state. We cannot have our decisions about our planet and our outdoors made in that context. They have to be made in a long-term vision.
I would like to argue that caring for something is an apolitical thing, that ultimately our care should not have that sort of jaded perception.
It's beyond politics. It has always been beyond politics. It must be beyond politics.
If we are to see this new conservation movement in the state of Missouri, it really needs to be a broader tent and a broader conversation.
We need not to think about these individual reduced parts that maybe we can somehow put back together, but we think in a systems way. In the systems way, we're thinking about ecosystems, we're thinking about humans and how we fit in as a part of that.
Throughout Missouri's history, it has been a story of our people, how they stand up again and again to support all aspects of conservation in the state.
I think it is as good an example as anywhere in the world of what if a united people, not just united by their votes, but united by the way they feel and live, are committed to the understanding that the future is going to be preserved and better and conserved. And I think Missourians understand we also have to share that value.
When I climb a deer stand, when I am walking through a pre-dawn wood to climb high and the stars are still in the sky and there's just this glow of orange tinting the inky blue, and the world is just beginning to come back into its daylight self, it feels to me at that moment as if I am on the edge of creation.